When it comes to games that are involved in some sort of controversy, Postal is usually involved. It's a violent, bloody game where you play as a dude named Postal Dude, who goes completely apeshit and decides that every inhabitant of his town called Paradise has gone crazy. Because these people are crazy, Postal Dude takes it upon himself to eliminate all of these threats. The story is really only a basis for something you've probably done in a Grand Theft Auto game. Kill everyone in sight. There's no police involvement to stop you. Well, other than the officers that are already attempting to kill you. So the whole point of the game is to destroy a certain percentage of the stage and then press F1 to continue. Here begins the problems with Postal. Unless you have the manual to tell you this, it's hard to know that you need to press F1 to move on. The game tells you in the first 5 seconds of every level what percentage you need to kill to pass the stage, and also to press F1 to end the stage, but then it goes away. You'd think that when you kill the required enemies that would notify you again, but it doesn't. Because of this, the first time I played, I had no idea that I had to press F1, so after killing every enemy on the stage, I just wandered around lost. I had to go to gunk.com just to check out the manual again, and lo and behold, F1's a required key. Why do I need to press this though? Who thought F1 was a good idea? Why not a prompt that pops up when you finish the stage that says, hey, why don't you press F1 or this key to continue? Or why doesn't the game just automatically move me on when every enemy is dead? Maybe it's to give me some time to collect any health, armor, or ammo, but give me some sign of what to do, or something. When reading the manual, I also found out that F2 is used to enable or disable the crosshair. But before I talk about that, let me talk about the controls in general. It's actually the first thing I noticed about Postal. The control system feels awkward. Granted, many isometric games feel strange to a degree, but in Postal it just feels a little worse. To be honest, it's really hard to explain. Postal Dude just seems to move and turn slowly. When moving and turning, he has to rotate around instead of immediately turning in the desired direction. When standing still though, he can freely rotate. As I said, it's kinda hard to explain. One thing I can explain though, is the lack of refined movement when trying to shoot enemies. Your main weapon is an assault rifle with unlimited ammo, but the spread on it is so great that at range, it can be difficult to hit anybody unless you have a perfect line of sight. Well, when rotating Postal Dude to aim, it's impossible to get this perfect line of sight. As such, enemies will have a much easier time to shoot you. So, as you struggle to kill your enemies, you may waste a lot of your ammo just lining up your sight. In any case, this is where F2 comes in. When you think of a crosshair, I think of a constant one that's on the screen at all times, allowing you to figure out who you're shooting. But of course, in Postal, that's not the case. The crosshair in this game only functions when you're properly lined up against an enemy, so its only real purpose is to show you who you're actually shooting at. Well, sort of. The problem is that many enemies that you kill won't die immediately, and instead will crawl around on the ground begging for their lives. Since they're still technically living, the crosshair will often lock onto these bodies instead of the standing ones, even though you're actually still shooting the active enemies. I actually got to the point where I just found the crosshair wasn't as useful as I was hoping, so I turned it off. So because the aiming is flawed, many of the weapons are nearly useless, as they're impossible to aim properly. The explosive weapons are the ones affected the most by this, and especially the grenades. At least you can use the crosshair function to help aim the rocket launcher, but grenades give you no such luxury. As such, it's more trial and error, but of course that wastes your supplies. Throwing the grenades forces you to chuck one and learn where it goes and adjust your character. But because Postal Dude doesn't aim and find distances, you'll probably end up throwing 5 or 6 before actually getting one to land where you want. In the meantime, you may have to run away to dodge one of your misthrown grenades, and so you'll have to repeat the process. See what I'm getting at here? You also can't throw projectiles over objects. Instead, the grenades and other throwable objects will just bounce back at you, no matter where it's thrown. You'd think you could throw weapons over cars, but of course that's not the case. Let me move back to the whole F1 fiasco again. When I first completed level 1 and was trying to figure out how to continue the game, I started pressing random buttons just to see if any one of them moved me on. Well, one sort of did, although it moved me backwards. Pressing Q actually functions as a suicide button. Why the fuck do you need a suicide button? I know this game's already violent and all, but is there really a point to this? You can't get stuck on scenery or anything, so it's not like a, oh crap, I'm stuck, what do I do now kind of button. It's just another one of those things where you just scratch your head and ignore it exists. Now, I already mentioned how defeated enemies often crawl around the ground in agony, and although it's an interesting design at first, It starts to get really annoying. Once an enemy hits the ground, they won't attack back, but instead will cry out and repeat annoying quotes. I swear, if I hear "Has anyone seen my ears" one more time, I might go crazy myself. Anyway, these quotes are repeated ad nauseum, and at times you may have 10 or more of them chanting nonsense. The only way to stop them is that you go up to one of the down opponents and press X to execute them. It's a shame that there's only one move available, and it doesn't matter what weapon you have equipped. When pressing X, you always pump a few bullets of the assault rifle into the enemy. Kind of boring, actually, for such a violent video game. Speaking of nonsense, at the beginning of each stage you'll be treated to some sort of short journal entry that shows the mind of Postal Dude. As twisted as they are, I can only assume that they're included to show that Postal Dude is actually the one going insane. I guess I should touch on the graphics a bit. The environments are probably the best looking part of the game, but of course the animated characters are completely the opposite. They're blocky and lack any real detail. Even the weapons make you wonder what the hell they're supposed to be. The biggest problem with Postal? It's just flat out boring. The first few stages aren't too bad, but then you realize how wasted the actual weapons are, and that there's hardly any new enemy types, so it's essentially the same thing over and over again. The only weapon really worth using is a shotgun, but even that seems underpowered. It also seems that every enemy takes way too many shots to fall. 3 shotgun blasts point blank? Come on! This game as a whole just feels unbalanced. The shame is that the game had potential in my opinion, but it just doesn't deliver. The repetitiveness of the game just didn't hold my interest. And after about playing, 6 levels, I just quit because I had no motivation to continue. Don't get me wrong, many games have repetitive natures, but often they'll include new stuff to keep you going. Postal fails in that aspect. I know it was a game blamed in a lot of violent activities in the world, and I can see why. But as for the game itself, I find it horribly done. I wouldn't recommend anyone plays it. If you just want to run around causing chaos, go play a GTA game. Those are a hell of a lot more fun than this. Final score? 3 out of 10. This is Reaper. Happy fragging.